Hi, welcome back. We've had an incredible week this week in terms of your comments and your posts, and it's obvious that you're really getting into this, and we're excited about what you're learning, what you're sharing with us, and we'll address a couple of the issues that were discussed this week. The first one is an old topic that really gets discussed quite a bit across the whole education arena, and that is, can business ethics be taught? Linda, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd like to jump on that. And also, I felt the energy in your communication and the passion about what you were saying and trying to tease through and understand two categories of ethics. And quite frankly, the word ethics creates a lot of ambiguity in people's minds as to what we're talking about. So when we talk about ethics, are we talking about your personal ethics, or are we talking about organizational ethics and ethics in the workplace? And I think that's where the rub is coming this week in some of the communication and some of the back and forth on whether or not ethics can be taught. We were on the faculty at the University of Memphis, and there was a professor that was quoted in the paper saying in the accounting department he didn't expect to be able to change his students' ethics. By the time they were 17 or 18, their ethics were set. And that clearly showed that he was talking about their personal ethics. Because why would we be teaching business ethics course, business and society, corporate governance, business law, leadership courses if we didn't think that we could help teach our students how to understand what an ethical issue is, how to create a culture that supports ethical conduct, how to reward, how to provide negative sanctions when the inappropriate behavior occurs. So what we're talking about is all the elements that occur in the workplace when you take a job or you become a manager or a leader of others, what you're expected to do to maintain that ethical organizational culture and let your employees know what the risk areas are, which is a pretty equivalent concept to ethics, is the risk areas in any organization that need to be managed, dealt with, and supported in the behavior of those employees within that organization.
You know, and the other thing is ethics, business ethics in most colleges is held to a higher level than other subject matter. For example, we teach marketing. Do we guarantee that we're really teaching marketing and changing people's behavior and that they'll become great marketers? We teach accounting and management and human resource management. No, but when we teach ethics, everyone has to say, unless you can prove that you've really changed people's ethics, you shouldn't be teaching it. Of course, we're not trying to change someone's personal ethics, but the Ethics Resource Center has found that employees who work in companies where they have strong ethics programs actually become more ethical in their own personal life. I found that really surprising, but very informative. And let's face it, one of the big elements in many of these decision models is moral intensity. And if we do nothing other than allow students to become more aware of what are ethical issues, when should they be addressed, how do you address them, and how do you avoid engaging in ethical risks that could be destructive to you and your organization, that's what we're all about. And we will never be able to guarantee that we're going to make everybody ethical. That's not what we're in business doing. Just like we can't make everyone a great CPA or an accountant or lawyer or doctor, whatever it might be. Now, addressing this other issue.
No, can I finish up a
yes.
little bit more? I want to address one more point. I think this idea that people have a difficult time identifying ethical issues is a critical and crucial one, because quite often you're well into engaging in some type of unethical behavior before you recognize that there's ethical issues involved. Because a lot of times in organizations, you're part of a team or you're part of a department where you're only a piece of a decision. And until you have some time and perspective and see how everybody else's behaviors and activities are factoring into what you're doing, it's very difficult for you to see how at first blush what you did has some ethical overtones. So that makes it even more complex for our students and even more critical for us to spend time with them, helping them understand ethical issues in the organization, identifying them, how to establish an ethical organizational culture, and so on.
Okay, and the other thing we need to address is the ethical decision-making model. The ethical decision-making model is descriptive and not normative. A normative model will tell you how or what you should do. It will tell you exactly what decision to follow based on some normative specifications. But the reason we think a descriptive model is important because it helps you to understand what are the variables, what are the influencers of ethical decision making. And as a manager and an ethical leader, if you recognize that organizational culture and significant others is been found to be more of a determinant of what people do than even their individual moral background, or possibly other issues such as opportunity in the organization, which is also very important, you begin to learn more about how to manage and control. And keep in mind, we come back to the idea that as an ethical leader, in teaching ethical leadership to students, they have to recognize this is just not about my ethics and my ability to make decisions, but if I'm going to be a manager, how am I going to be able to lead others and make sure that they're on an ethical track that will be in line with what the organization wants to achieve in terms of good business ethics. So looking back at the model, keep in mind it is a descriptive model. There's room for descriptive models, there's also room for normative models. And you mentioned several variables we didn't include in there. We were trying to keep it simple at this point, and there are other ethical models that do take into account some of the cultural or other environmental areas. But this model was just really looking at the ethical decision, what are the influencers of ethical decision making.
And just to summarize, the key influencer, and no surprise, it's what your boss and coworkers do. So if your boss says, hey, you know, take off at 3 o'clock, you've been working hard, or take a couple-hour lunch, or, you know, go ahead and charge that to the client because we've been working weekends to put this report together, you do what your boss and your coworkers do. Now that being said, when we get into the federal sentencing guidelines for organization, one of the guidelines says, don't put a person in a position of authority who has a propensity to bend or break the rules. Consequently, even when the federal sentencing guidelines were being established, they understood the role of the work group and the supervisor in the work group to corrupt the work group and how key an influence that is.
Very good. Well, I think we're about out of time. Again, this is an incredible group. You've got great participants. I know you're learning from each other, and we're learning from you. And let's keep an open discussion. Anything's fair game. Let us know your opinions, your concerns. Let us know if you disagree with us, and we'll all hopefully have a lot of fun learning more about business ethics education. Hope to see you again soon.